We good? Should we start? Go ahead. Okay, I guess we're going to start. You probably all know me, but I'll introduce myself. My name is Dianne Scialla. I work here at the museum. I've studied Roman culture and history probably all of my adult life. I've been very fortunate to meet with some outstanding people throughout my studies who have helped me in my understanding of Roman culture, Roman architecture, just about everything. So without them throughout my life, I doubt if I would be standing here on the stage right now. So if I were to ask you what edifice in Rome really represented the epitome of Roman achievement, what would you say? Probably most of you would say the Colosseum or maybe the Pantheon, two outstanding architectural wonders of ancient Rome. Maybe you would say the Roman Forum, certainly the center of economics and law, which was the basis for Western law and economics. If you asked me what edifice would be the most representative of ancient Rome, I would say to you the Roman baths. Now, a lot of you might say, well, that's just absolutely absurd. What does a Roman bathtub have to do with Roman culture? And I would tell you everything. Roman baths embraced everything that was successful in the ancient Roman world: art, architecture, water engineering, heating engineering, aqueducts, sociology, political propaganda for what it's worth, medicine, and health. At the height of the Roman Empire, there were 856 small baths in Rome and 11 thermae, large imperial baths that would probably house about 3,000 people per day. There were 9 aqueducts in Rome during the height of the Roman Empire, and they brought in 300 gallons of water per person per day. Everyone went to the baths. Men, women, children, even slaves went to the baths. It was part of their culture. It was part of being Roman. So today what we're going to look at are several examples of Roman baths. We're going to look at them from Rome all the way down to Naples, so that you will get an understanding of what a Roman bath is all about. And hopefully by the end of this lecture, you'll agree with me that Roman baths were really the buildings that made Rome great. So meet me at the baths. Now let's see if we can operate this. So Roman baths were all structured the same. But first of all, I should say to you, the Romans did not invent baths or bath culture. That belonged to the Greeks. The Greeks invented everything, but the Greeks, as opposed to the Romans, the Greeks had individual bathtubs with a slave pouring cold water on them. The Romans didn't want anything like that. They loved hot water. So that's one of the first differences between Roman baths and other baths. Roman baths were structured in a certain way, and no matter what bath complex you're looking at in the Roman world, they're pretty much about the same. The second thing that makes a Roman bath Roman is that Romans did not bathe individually. Romans bathed in big bathtubs where several people could sit in the bathtub. Now, that said, men and women did not bathe together. They're in the big imperial baths, they think that maybe women bathed in the morning, men bathed in the afternoon. And in some of these baths I'm going to show you, there was actually a place for women. Women had the smaller bath section, of course, and men had the larger ones. But everyone, like I said, bathed. Now, this is how a Roman bath is set up. This is the first room you would walk into when you would walk into a Roman bath. This is called an apoditerium. This is where you would go. You would leave your clothes here. You can kind of see, okay, I'm going to see right here. These are kind of like shelves right here. This is a gorgeous bath complex. And this is where you would dump your clothes, or if you were going to the exercise court, you would put on your exercise outfit. If you were a wealthy person, this is where you would tote all of your slaves, so that one was carrying your towel, and one was carrying your bath oils, and one was carrying this, that, and the other, and then you would park your slaves here just to impress other people. So this is the first room, this is our changing room. From there, you would go to the tepidarium, which is a warm pool. Now the Romans set these baths up so that you went from warm to hot to cold. There were several Roman doctors. One of them was Asclepiades of Bithynia, there was Keller, there was Galen. They all talked about this was part of a health regimen that Romans would use. So it was always warm, hot, cold. So this is our tepidarium. You can see right here, this is where you would kind of semi-heat the water right here. From there, you're going into the caldarium. This is the hot room. Now, these pools in the caldarium were, they think, about 102 degrees. The floors were heated, the walls are heated, so it was nice and hot. From here, you could go laterally to what's called a laconicum, or a sudatorium. These are two. One was a sauna, and one was a steam room, but you would maintain that heat. And then finally, you're going to a natatio, which is an outdoor swimming pool, or the frigidarium. And these were cold. Now, some frigidarium could be on the inside, the natatio was usually on the outside, the swimming pool, but it kept up with that same regimen of warm, hot, cold. Now, again, remember, men and women did not bathe together. That is a myth. In the larger bath complexes, you would have women bathing in the morning. They got the rotten hours. And then men would bathe in the afternoon, usually about 1 o'clock till whenever, until they went for dinner. But it was divided. There were several times when they started sliding, but that was not a good thing, and the emperors cut that out. So, where did the baths originate? Well, there's several theories. The one I like the most talks about the Roman baths originating outside of Naples at an area called Baia. This is because this area is loaded with volcanic activity, seismic activity, and there are numerous volcanoes around this section. Much more dangerous than Vesuvius will ever be. This area is one of those where the ground raises and lowers. So it is a very dangerous area. It's also an extremely beautiful area. So this is Baia. probably put up around 200 BC. They started to take advantage of the hot springs that were coming out of the volcanic area there. So these were all fed by hot springs. The wealthy started coming down to this area, wealthy Romans. Julius Caesar had a villa down here, and then consequently, a lot of emperors had palaces down here. So you can kind of, you can kind of see, maybe, that Baia goes straight up this hill. So you've got all sorts of things. You've got walkways, you've got spas, you've got shops, just numerous areas going all the way up the hill. So this was an extremely popular spa. And when you look out over the bay here, this is the Bay of Baia. This is where the emperors had their palaces right down on the shoreline there. But just to show you how dangerous this area is, this whole area right here, this Bay of Baia, was a volcano that blew about 7,000 years ago and created the bay. The emperor's palaces are no longer, you can no longer see them above water. They slid into the bay, so now there's a big push to start doing marine archaeology in this bay, and they have found several palaces. I don't think they're quite sure what they're finding, but they are finding quite a bit in the bay. Here you can kind of see this must have been some sort of temple area or whatever incorporated into this massive spa. And the mosaic floors. Now, this is not a good picture, I apologize, but this area is really kind of difficult to photograph. This is a dome. You can kind of tell with an oculus right here, the hole in the top. And they're saying that this is either a hot pool or it could have been a tepidarium, a warm pool. But this dome is half the size of the Pantheon. But it was put up 100 years before the Pantheon. So this area is extremely important, not only for the originating baths, but also for another important Roman discovery, and that is pozzolana. I don't know if you've heard of that before, but this is an ingredient in concrete that makes it extremely strong. You can pour it underwater, and it'll hold. You can build things like this dome without worrying about it collapsing. My grandfather came from this area, and he told my dad that when you built an arch or anything like that, if you used the pozzolana from this area, you didn't have to use a form for your arch, which is totally unheard of, but it stuck so well. So this was a major invention that started in this area. And 100 years later, you get something as magnificent as the Pantheon. Here is the local resident. I just thought this was amazing. He's the only one using the spa now. This is the swimming pool of Baia. This would have been fed, or it would have been filled, I should say, by the hot springs from the volcanic activity. I don't know if the building ops guys are here. Kenneth and Scott? No? Building ops. Okay, these guys are amazing, so I always ask them, okay, take the dimensions of this, which is 114 feet by 93 feet, and map it out in the museum somewhere. And bless them, they did that. So This is how big that swimming pool is. This is Space Odyssey. So the blue area is the swimming pool. Not too shabby. All right, from there we're going to go to Pompeii, to the Stabian Baths. The Stabian Baths were put up probably about the same time as Baia, but originally the Stabian Baths were just this small section right here, and they were fed by a cistern on the roof of the baths. But that all changed when Augustus Caesar came down to this area. He was fighting Sextus Pompey, I believe, and he has the most brilliant general with him, Marcus Agrippa. Marcus Agrippa and his engineers developed a wonderful aqueduct that fed not only Pompeii, but some of the other cities in the area. And there was a line that came right down this street right here, the Via Stabiana, and it fed these baths. So once they had that much water, they were able to expand the baths. This is the women's section right here, men's section right here, exercise court right here, swimming pool here, and poditarium here. And this section, they actually found the old Greek baths, the individual ones with the cold water. Yeah. So you have to imagine, because the baths, have been exposed to the wind and the rain and everything else. But at one time, these would have been brightly colored, stuccoed baths. They would have been absolutely gorgeous. This is the poditarium, the changing room in the Stabian Baths. And you can see stucco right here. This is not a good picture, I apologize again, but it's still painted. You can still see the color of the bath complex in this stucco. Every year, the workers in these baths would have to repaint these ceilings because of the steam and this, that, and the other. But they would diligently probably repaint all of this ceiling, and it must have just been exquisite. This is called a stridulated ceiling. I don't know if you've ever done this, but I have. If you've ever sat in a steam room and the water drips on you and it's freezing and you're in this hot steam room and you just jump, this is why the ceiling is like this, because the water doesn't drip on your head, it comes down off to the side and it's channeled right there. Another brilliant Roman invention. This is the caldarium, again, with the original paint. Now, these baths, obviously, I told you before, they're heated. So I want to show you how the Roman baths were heated because, again, this is another brilliant invention. So all of these baths are built on basements. Your basement goes in first. Your heating engineers, your water engineers have to figure out everything before you even put this bath complex up. They have to know where the pipes are going. They have to know where the boilers are going, where you're putting whatever to heat the water. So if you look at this illustration, this is underground. We've got this guy feeding the fire right here. And then there's forced air heat going underneath the floors and also in these tubes right here. These are called tubuli. So the walls had terracotta tubes in them so that the walls were even heated. The way this is structured is you have to have these tubuli in the walls, otherwise the floors would be so hot you couldn't even walk on them. And if you go into some Roman baths, even now, you'll see on the floor there's a mosaic that shows sandals. And what this is saying to you is, hey, you need to wear your sandals in this area or you're going to burn your feet. Still there. So this is basically how these bath complexes were heated. And depending on which room, whether it was a tepidarium or obviously the caldarium, and remember the caldarium, the hot room, was about 102 degrees as far as the water goes. So the floors were hollow. This is a really nice example in the Stabian baths as far as how they made the floors. They would put it up on tiles, and here's your floor right here. So all of this hot air is going underneath right here to heat the bath and the floor. Here's another room where you can kind of see like where the tiles would have been put in order to raise the floor. This is the swimming pool. Excuse me. And again, if you use your imagination, all of this would have been stuccoed, and it all would have been brightly colored. It would have been just a magnificent bath complex. So this bath complex also had an exercise court in the center, and I will mention something else as far as these baths go. And that is on the other side of this bath complex. In fact, there's even a doorway beyond where the swimming pool was. There was the largest brothel in Pompeii. So this was an area where prostitution kind of thrived because a lot of these prostitutes, men and women, would cruise these bath complexes. And then, like I said, that's like the most famous street in Pompeii where all the tour guides take you now to that particular brothel. But it's next to the baths, so it kind of stands to reason. All right, now from there we're going to go to Ostia Antica. This Ostia is outside of Rome. It was Rome's seaport, and this area really started thriving during the age of Trajan, the age of Hadrian, 2nd century AD. And I wanted to show you these baths because you can kind of see with these that the Romans are starting to use solar energy, or at least being aware that the sun, the way they face the bath, was going to help in terms of heating the bath. So they would always point their warm rooms towards the south, southeast, and then the cold rooms are going to be in the north. So they did use the solar energy somewhat. They started to use glass window panes. So in this bath section right here, you had sunrooms where people could sun themselves in the winter even. So that was another Roman belief in terms of health. This is another beautiful mosaic here. And this is a frigidarium. And here are those tubuli, which they're still in place here. So these would have come right up the side of the wall. They would have been heated, and then the heat would have gone out of the roof. Here's a better picture of them. So just amazing that it's still all there. So there's also another huge debate, there probably always will be, in terms of how sanitary these baths were. On the one side of the issue, you have scientists, archaeologists who are saying that Roman baths were filthy, they were loaded with bacteria, people probably got sick, there was nothing healthy about these baths. And on the other side, you would have scientists and archaeologists saying, no, they were sanitary, that they were healthy, that because Romans used them daily, that they were a health benefit. I agree to a certain point. If you had a small bath complex run by someone who could care less about the baths, maybe if they weren't cleaned daily or if they were using a cistern or whatever, that maybe the baths would have been loaded with bacteria, unhygienic, whatever you want to say. But I think that ignores several points that really kind of lean towards the other argument, that they were healthy. Number one, Rome was loaded with historians. We've never had anyone write, any Roman historian write about an outbreak of whatever in a bath complex. That just, it's non-existent. Secondly, you have to remember what these baths were fed with, and that is aqueducts. Ostia here had its own aqueduct, and it also had its own sewer. You cannot shut off a Roman aqueduct per se. The water flows constantly. The water would flow into the bath complex, and it wouldn't stay in the tub. It would overflow over the tub. Slaves would probably be sweeping up water or whatever and forcing it into a drain like this one. Romans also never wasted anything, and that goes for water too. From here, this water was channeled into another area, and eventually it went to the large public latrines right next door to the baths. So it flushed out the latrine, and from there, it went into the sewer. From the sewer, it would probably, unfortunately, go into the Tiber, but it was channeled throughout. So you have to keep that in mind, that these baths were relatively clean. And now we're going to go to my favorite bath complex. These are the suburban baths. They are in Herculaneum. They're my absolute favorites. The bath complex has been closed for about 25 years. I was just fortunate enough to get into it. What makes this bath complex so amazing is that you really get a sense of the volcanic activity when Vesuvius hit Herculaneum. I don't know if you caught my other lecture on Herculaneum, but Herculaneum is different than Pompeii. It was hit with a pyroclastic flow about 800 degrees Fahrenheit, and it was blowing about 200 miles an hour. And it just filled up this city with pyroclastic material, and it hardened. So these baths were buried originally, but here they are. So this is the atrium of the bath complex. And here's another picture of the atrium. So these are tubuli right here, those tubes that I was showing you in Ostia. But again, it just shows you how amazing that pyroclastic flow was when it hit Herculaneum. So it actually filled the inside of these tubes with material. You can see it right there. all of this was totally filled. The sewers were totally filled. Everything was filled with this pyroclastic material that was extremely hard. In fact, when the pyroclastic material came down and hit the seashore, because this bath is on the seashore, it backed up because the water was cold, the pyroclastic flow is hot, it backed it up, and then it dumped 60 feet of material right there. This is my friend Giuseppe Zolfo, who's the conservation curator of Herculaneum. This is why I got into the bath complex, but he's showing right here, this is the caldarium of this bath complex. This was an actual window that had a glass pane, and of course, out here would have been the sea. But when the pyroclastic material hit, when the surge cloud hit, it burst through this window. It picked up this labrum, which is this marble basin right there. So it just picked it up like it was nothing. It threw it across the room. And this is the imprint of the pyroclastic material with the glass still in it. It's absolutely amazing to see this. But that just shows you the force of that surge cloud, that it just tossed that marble labrum. This is the tepidarium with the marble floor still intact. This is also the tepidarium, but look right here, that was a doorway. That's all filled with pyroclastic material. It's never been opened. It's still just stuffed with pyroclastic material. The reason Herculaneum is so amazing is that all of its organic materials are still conserved. So this right here is actually the wooden door that has been conserved all these years. Still there. And again, you can see this is stuffed right here. This is the frigidarium with the white marble floor. There is some wood, a wood door jamb right there that is still preserved. But all of this area, the area behind here was all a service area. It's still loaded with pyroclastic material. This is a very unique area in the suburban baths. This is called a piscina cálida, a hot pool. This is one of the only hot pools that was heated by a brass samovar. So almost like a turtle shell over here, so that the pool was heated, and again, you have the glass window right here. But there's only two that they know of in this area. One is this one, and the other one, I believe, is in Stabiae. But that one is missing also because Lord Hamilton, who was the ambassador to Naples in the 1800s or whatever, stole it and it sunk. So it never made it back to England. So anyway, that is really an unusual feature of this bath complex. Okay. So now we're going to Rome. This is the imperial baths of Diocletian. These were put up about 296 AD to about 306, 308. They're huge. They cover about 29 acres. They're still finding areas of this bath complex underneath hotels, underneath, you name it. It goes everywhere. So these, again, were kind of the height of Roman achievement. This is where all of this understanding and learning got rolled into this bath complex. So you have a basement underneath the bath complex, a big basement with about 25 furnaces and roads so that you could bring pack animals in to bring the wood in. And again, the heating engineers, the water engineers would have had to figure out just where everything was going in order for the bath complex to work. So all of that would have been put in first before they even thought about the top layer. So you've got the caldarium right here, tepidarium, frigidarium, natatio, apoditarium right here. And if you notice, you've got a double, 2 apoditarium and sudatorium. This is an ungent room where you would be oiled or whatever, but these are all doubled, and that's because they think that in order for this to function, say some of these rooms went on the blink, you could shut off this area to work on it, and you'd still have the other side, so you could still bring people in. It would still function. So that was a new innovation. So this area right here was an exedra. This is where they would have games and things like that. There were libraries, there were concert halls, there were rooms where you could get your, have your hair removed. Romans didn't like body hair, so you could have that done. But it was a huge complex, a huge entertainment center, not just for bathing. You could do a lot of things in this area. So the baths lasted even after the Roman Empire fell. They lasted until the Vandals cut the aqueducts, but even after that, they were still there. In the 1500s, they were still there, and the Pope commissioned Michelangelo to make a church out of the baths. So he did. It's called Santa Maria degli Angeli, St. Mary of the Angels. But Michelangelo, being Michelangelo, looked at the ceiling of these baths, and he refused to pull down the ceilings because the ceilings are vaulted ceilings. And so Michelangelo, thank goodness, kept those. So here you can see that vaulted ceiling right there. This would have been the frigidarium. Now, I want you to remember I was talking about Pozzolana and how, you have to pour these ceilings. This ceiling was poured. So in order to get up here, this is 7 stories tall. So you would have to scaffold your entire way up here, and then you would do a form right here and pour your ceiling. So if you ever get to these baths, look up and look at this ceiling, because what you're seeing is something that is truly miraculous. And they do think that medieval architects must have seen the ceiling, and that's why they took this idea back to France and England as far as doing Gothic cathedrals. Same idea. So obviously this thing is not lightweight. I mean, it's relatively light, maybe, but it's... So you would think that it's resting on this column, right? This huge granite column that Diocletian brought from Egypt. But that's not true. This is another amazing architectural feature. And I learned this from Professor Reisner, Stephen Reisner of West Point, who is a engineer who also loves Roman archaeology and history. The ceiling is not resting on this column. This column is simply cosmetic. It's simply there to impress you, along with the other marble. And it says that this emperor is so powerful, he can bring stone from wherever he wants to bring it. This ceiling is resting on this impost block right here. This block is channeling the weight of the ceiling down into the floor, which is truly amazing. So you can see, again, these impost blocks up here. That is what's channeling the weight into the wall and down to the floor. This, again, is the church, obviously, but this was the frigidarium, the cold pool. And this just gives you a sense of how massive this thing is. And just beautiful. And the columns, again, are our original columns. This is the tepidarium, the cool pool. So you can see how large that was. Again, it's part of the church. And unfortunately, the caldarium, Michelangelo kept the caldarium, the hot pool, but later architects pulled it down, so we don't have the caldarium. We just, when you enter the church now, you enter into the tepidarium. Now, the Romans in this bath complex, it was fed by the Aqua Marcia. The Aqua Marcia also fed the baths of Caracalla. The Aqua Marcia was one of the most important aqueducts in the ancient Roman world. It brought in a lot of water to Rome, and it's very close to where this bath complex is. But the Romans used it during the day. So what they devised was that at night, they would shut off the Marcia to ancient Rome, or the Roman city, and they would channel it into the bath complex and fill up the cisterns. And then once morning came, they would channel it back or open it up, and it would go back to the city of Rome, and they would have enough water to run the baths. This is one of those cisterns. It's huge, and it's now actually part of the museum in right next door to the bath complex. Underneath my foot here, you can see it's wonderful. They have different glassed-in sections so that you can see part of the guts underneath, the basement and everything, and kind of get a sense of what it looked like underneath. And this is kind of a faint representation of what the baths might have looked like. And again, this is what the ceiling, stuccoed ceiling, painted ceiling, so really magnificent artwork. This is an actual column that is still there. This is all egg and dart work, and it would have taken an artisan a long time to chisel that using sand and a drill. So this might have been what the columns would look like. This is the swimming pool, 43,000 square feet of swimming pool outside. This is the Natatio. And you would have accessed it. Unfortunately, you can't access it now because the altar is right here, and then you have to go outside to access the Natatio. But huge swimming pool. This would have been the Nymphaeum. This is behind the swimming pool, so this would have been stuccoed, marbled, and all of these niches would have had statues in them. And right here is, on the other side, would have been the altar. Is the altar still there? This is what this Nymphaeum would have looked like. So this is modern. This is what it would have looked like with the swimming pool. And as you went up, you'd have all of these statues, and then you would have had a major statue of Diocletian, probably on a horse. And we're going to end with another Roman saying, which is mens sana in corpore sano, healthy mind and a healthy body. And who could argue with that? All right, thank you very much. Anybody have any questions? Oh, I do. I have the cube.
Questions?
So, a couple of questions. Is the material mostly marble and granite that the baths were made out of?
They're faced with marbles, and the columns were mostly granite, like Egyptian columns, things like that. The baths themselves were made out of brick. So your foundation is brick, and then you would have faced it. And that, again, that's the Roman propaganda. The emperor saying, look, silver fixtures, marbles from Egypt, marbles from Greece, you know, I'm so powerful. So that was also very important as far as.
And just one more question. Can you speak a little bit about the labor that went into keeping the baths hot when they weren't volcanically fed? And where did they get all the wood from? I mean,
Well, if you go outside of Rome, you'll figure that out awful quick because there's hardly any wood anymore. But so they would haul it, you know, from the countryside. And the baths, I mean, it would have been an army. There's a wonderful scholar who actually figured out manpower and everything else, because if you've got 25 furnaces underneath these baths, you would have to have a massive amount of slaves down there stoking the fires. And so it was like an army to keep these going. And then, you know, heating that water on a daily basis or whatever.
Other questions?
I think I'm most interested to know more about the routine. Did everybody bathe daily? How long would it take them to go through this whole process? What were they bathing with? What, you know, kind of for the average pleb or whoever, what would that look like?
They think, like in these imperial baths, that women would start bathing about 6 in the morning till noon, which, like I said, poor women, because the baths weren't heated. Yeah, I mean, it took a while to heat the water, so if you arrived at 6, you probably didn't get like a real hot bath, but they did go daily. I mean, it was kind of like a routine, and even in far-flung areas of the Roman Empire, there was usually a bath complex, because this was part of their being Roman. And then the men, they think, bathed maybe from like 1:30 to 4 or 5. And again, remember, there's no lighting at night, so there's no night bathing as far as they can tell. So it was just basically that daily bathing. You didn't have to just bathe. Like I said, in some of these, maybe people would just go exercise. So there's not like there is a regimen as far as the way these baths are set up, but that doesn't prove that everybody went through the same process, so.
Other questions?
Those brass turtle things that heated those two.
The test.
In the picture, there was a circle and a pillar in the middle of it. Is that where the fire was?
Yeah,
that
underneath
heated those
there,
brass
yeah.
things? Okay.
Yep.
Awesome.
Yep.
That's all.
Others? All right, let's thank Dianne for a great lecture.
Thank you.